All right. Then a lot of our destiny is not made alone. It's made with other people. Now that brings in, I started thinking about collective destiny. How can there be a collective destiny if there isn't a collective soul? If we are all individually responsible, is there something that we all put together to make a self that is all of us, and that when we partake of that we have a collective soul and a collective destiny? I'm asking the questions rhetorically, but yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say that the karma of a nation, country, is built up by the people that live in it and their actions.
Which ones?
Whichever.
A country is a formation, you know. There are new people.
The country, whichever. This karma is built up by all the people in this nation. Their actions are just like individually, are the ones there that dictate how much it is in the bank.
Yeah,
how much is out.
That sounds very good, but I'm not certain that I can agree with that.
And at the time of catastrophes, dry weathers,
Enrique, I'd like to suggest that we hear Richard and have the questions at the end. Otherwise, we'll be here till 3 a.m.
Okay. That's not agreeable to me for a number of reasons.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Or we'll just at the end here. If there is a collective destiny, do we have to wait until everybody harmonizes before it can be worked out? This is something that a lot of people have thought. This is what's behind a lot of Buddhist thought. It's behind the whole bodhisattva ideal that they will not take salvation until each and every person can take salvation. And the same thing is true with perhaps with collective destiny. I don't know. I don't have answers to all of these yet. So, in short, how do we develop destiny debts? And how do we develop a credit rating? Or put it another way, is it a joint account? We have that to look at. And how do we pay it off? Or is it something that should be paid off? I don't believe that. For me, even good destiny is bad destiny. And I don't mean negatively. I don't want to have a whole bunch of bad destiny. I want to be living in the now, right now. But those are a whole bunch of questions of the type I've asked myself. So it's questions of this type that we're going to look into, and I have a few simple ideas to introduce, and we'll go into them, some this year, some next year, some in succeeding years. Now, one thing I want to advise and I want to warn about, of all of the things that are in esoteric literature, destiny is the thing that is most trivialized. Because we see that this is associated, this consequence is associated with this cause, we think we understand destiny. Wrong altogether. Because God and the recording angels are much more efficient than that. Any given event has many, many things contributing to it, has many, many lessons involved in it. It's very much like history, where, like the American Civil War, each generation of historians comes along with a whole new interpretation. And when they come, first there was it was about slavery. Was the simple one. Later on, Charles Beard came along, and it was an economic theory. Later on, there was a communist theory, and each one of you can't say that these historians were fools, but each one of them was seeing another factor in that part of history. I think that an awful lot of individual destiny as well as historical destiny, it has many layers of meaning, and it's come at from many different directions, so that it's very easy to trivialize it. And I don't want to be guilty myself of that, and I would be very wary of it. Yes?
Can you define and distinguish between destiny and fate?
That's coming later on. It's coming along the way. Now, if you want a really simple notion of destiny, especially as it relates to economics, the Rosicrucian Fellowship publishes such a one. I looked after I made my notes, and I found I don't have any of them right now. It's called The Law and Our Needs, which was written by a very famous man. It was written by Joseph Darrow, the man who designed Grand Central Station and who was a very brilliant man. He was the brother of the Clarence Darrow, the lawyer of the Scopes monkey trial in Tennessee. The Law and Our Needs, it's simplistic, and you have to be careful of that, but it's nice and clear, and it gives you some real ideas about responsibility about your life, and looks at it in an intelligent way. Now, a lot of people in the world that are adversarial to what we want to do not believe that there is such a thing as a destiny. In fact, they try to proliferate it more than we are proliferating the principle of cause and consequence coupled together with the principle of rebirth. Because you look on bumper stickers, and there's a lot of bumper stickers out there that say, shit happens. As if to say, everything that goes on in the world is a fortuitous thing, and it's negative at that. There are a lot of other bumper stickers that say, nobody ever said life had to be fair. Both of those things are statements that are against what we hold to be very important and very fundamental truths for healthy living. And maybe we ought to start a movement. Maybe I ought to start another money-losing business. The Microcosm Esoteric Bumper Sticker Publishing House. But there's something like that. People don't always think that way when the chips do come down, when they're laying in the hospital and suffering, or when they have a lot of financial woes, or they have just been in a drunken automobile accident. They say to themselves, why me? As if there were, if they would really listen, it might pay off. But a lot of people who advertise one way are really very different. I don't believe the questions of destiny can be answered with a mundane consciousness, and not even with clairvoyance. It takes something more than the ordinary consciousness that we have, and even something more than clairvoyance. Is there a cause and consequence? Now, things are going to get a little more intellectual now. In regular philosophy, there were three great British philosophers. One of them was Scotch, actually. They were called the British empiricists. They were John Locke, after whom our whole Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights were after his philosophy. There was Bishop Berkeley, after whom Berkeley, California is named, and it's just as dreamy as his philosophy is. And the one we're going to look at was the Scotch philosopher called David Hume. David Hume said he couldn't believe in cause and consequence, not even cause and effect in science. And the classic example that he gives is on a billiards table. He said, we see one billiard ball come up to another billiard ball. There is an impact, and one billiard ball ricochets one way, the other billiard ball ricochets another way. He says, did you see a cause and effect? He says, you saw an event of one billiard ball moving up, and you saw other billiard balls moving away, where did you see the cause and effect? Meaning to say that with our perception, we don't see cause and effect. Even if we have clairvoyant perception, we don't see cause and effect. On the other hand, we don't take it on trust either. It requires something more. It requires continuous consciousness. Because in these phenomenal realms, the world of thought, the desire world, the etheric world, the physical world, we have beginnings and ends, and we have only partial consciousness. It's only when we get into the transcendental realms, into the realms of spirit, that we have continuous, unbroken consciousness where everything is present all at the same time. So unless we have spiritual sight, where we see with the eye of spirit, or unless we have intuition, because we sure know when we hurt somebody and it comes back to us, to see a pained look on a friend's face when we've said something unkind or something like that, we know in our intuition. But it isn't because we saw that pained look on the face. That just helps us, but it's the intuition. You have to have that. So destiny problems cannot be solved intellectually. They cannot be solved by perception. I'm way ahead of my notes here. This means that for us, as far as destiny and all the components and all the ramifications for it, it means that literally we say, as the Bible says, for now we see through a glass darkly. We know in part, but then we will know even as we are known, which means we will know in wholes. It's only when we have the total consciousness of spirit and the continuous consciousness of spirit that we can really know anything about destiny. So even though it seems like one of the first things we can talk about when we're on the spiritual path is what people call their karma, is it really isn't that way, only from intuition. All right. This has other ramifications, the same principle. This means that we can't hand the cosmic conception to anyone and expect them to take it. Nor can we expect to reason something into someone's consciousness about spiritual things. Even people like Madame Blavatsky, who did feats of magic, powerful feats of magic, like breaking glasses right in front of people and right in their hands by her own magical powers, and she never proved or convinced anyone by even a feat of magic. It is only when we appeal to the intuition, only when we appeal to the God within, that really people can know in the sense of the word gnosis or gnosis. As much as we can live in the Spirit and share the Spirit, that much can we influence or help other people or share with them, because it never happens that you just give to somebody. It never happens at all. The only time that there really is any kind of transaction or that you connect, both people are receiving and both people are giving. So sharing is the word that we really want to...
The angel's got her wings. The angel's got her wings.
Yeah.
She heard since you paid her credit off.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of reasonable things. There are people who are born stupid, mentally retarded, and some of these people are even abused. And they're born in poverty, and they have really bad lives. On the other hand, we have people like Jack Kennedy, intelligent, creative, quick, concerned, and wealthy. Now, it strikes us, we say it strikes our reason that this could only be an indication of cause and consequence together with rebirth. That makes a lot of sense, but the only thing that really has it to make sense is our intuition. People who do not have the intuition, they hear things like we're saying here, and they think we're absolutely crazy. They think we're divorced from reality. So unless we can accept that no matter what we're going to go into now as far as talking about destiny, unless we can accept that it's only going to be valid if it appeals to our intuition, we can't really go forward. Ooh, boy. Assuming then, for the sake of the talk, or we won't have any talk, we'll realize that we do have destiny debts. That in the past, because of the circumstances we have in this life and the misery and the seemingly unjust things that happen to us, it's reasonably safe to assume on the basis of intuition, but not necessarily on the basis of reason, that we do have destiny debts from past lives. Now, we need to look into what destiny is. This has happened to me. It's happened to me a number of times. It happened to me the funny thing is after I made these notes, I was cleaning up outside in the yard here. So part of it was vanity and part of it was consideration. I didn't want to have mud tracked all over the floor. On the other hand, I didn't want people to have to be walking in the mud. And I was cleaning away out there, and I stepped on the broom head. That's the way it goes. If you step on the rake head or on the broom head, bam, you get it in the head. And that is what I was getting at when I was asking that first rhetorical question, is if we step on the broom head and get hit in the head by the handle, how can we possibly have a destiny debt if what we put out is what we get back? I have a really strong Mercury as a life ruler, and it happens to be in Scorpio, so I tend to be very mental and very devious, but from time to time I have tried to juggle the books. You know, I may be the only person that sometimes juggles the books or takes advantage of all of the tax code to favor the government. The reason being is the law says that the only way you can keep a business open is by showing an intent to make money. And after many court precedents, the intent to make money is by you can only lose 3 out of 5 years. Therefore, if I really wrote down all of the expenses and everything for the bookstore, there's no chance in the world that I'd ever make a profit. And so I'd have to become a hobby. But if I were a hobby, then I couldn't get books at wholesale to share with other people, and so I have to make all of my taxes look like I make money in the bookstore. All this over a business that didn't gross $1,000 last year. In fact, I've even thought of renaming the bookstore Richard's Folly. But I want to get the books, and so I do that, and so I juggle the books. So what we're going to talk about is juggling. and the place that juggling has as an analogy to destiny. So now we go back to billiards. I would what?
Juggling with
Yes, destiny juggling. Back to billiards, I would say pool, but this is a highfalutin moral group, and we don't hang around pool halls. We go to billiard parlors, not pool halls. So we'll get back to that. Besides, we're talking about destiny debts, and when you say pool, things go in the hole, and we don't want to be going in the hole anymore. We want to be coming out forward. All right. One billiard ball strikes another billiard ball in an instant of time, which we call a moment. There is that instant of time, and what ensues from that impact of one billiard ball striking the other is momental. And in fact, the energy that is transferred back and forth is literally called momentum, from the same root. What happened in the moment? What happens to... Oh, okay. What happens to the pool balls after the moment of impact is determined by what happened to them beforehand. Irrespective of what we know about pool, what happens before is what's going to happen afterward. You know, there is a psycho-spiritual game of pool or billiards, you know. And in that, you know, there is no slop. It's all destiny. You can't get away with anything. And just by keeping the right attitude, you can I've played games of pool where it has been a mental game when neither person had any skill. And it was a battle of will. It is, so there are different kinds of skill. It's not a physical skill, it's a psychological skill. If we take this example, especially with the pool, where there are more balls, one ball strikes another ball, and that strikes other balls, and that strikes other balls. And when you start something going, what happens is one cause leads to a consequence, which leads to other consequences, which lead to yet other consequences, and this carries on ad infinitum until all of the energy is spent on that first pool ball, or any cause that we put into effect. One cause leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. It sounds like Macbeth, doesn't it? One murder leads to another, to another, to another. That when you start causes in motion, they keep on going. Well, I'd like to bring in other things. This is a linear conception of destiny. That is, cause produces consequence, which is a cause to yet another consequence, which is a cause to yet another consequence. It's linear. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. There is a problem with linear destiny in that it doesn't work. Because, like lines, they become tangential. They go off. This is what happens if you look at destiny too intellectually. You form a linear thing. You form it's called a line of thought or a line of reason. You start following it, and we can do this with our life. We can set ourselves in motion toward a given end. We can start a cause, and that has consequences, and we can just keep proceeding on. But if we keep proceeding on, we're going to be out in left field somewhere. So the linear destiny is very nice and it's very logical because you can look back and you can see how you got to where you are. But it leads to, people who are wily and who are cunning and try to get away with things have a linear view of cause and effect because they feel that nothing is coming back to them. That, that your bread is not going to come home and it isn't going to be a matter of what goes around comes around. And as a result, this is where people get into non-recyclable destiny. That is where you throw things away. Things are expandable. This is the kind of consciousness that in, like the Western world is very linear. We're very logical. We follow causes and consequences. We look back and we see what caused what caused what. And we've gotten to this thing that we can control nature with our logic. But we have this disposability attitude. Just toss it away, not realizing that things do come back. So one element of understanding destiny comes from linear, logical, developmental thought. Now, that's one kind of destiny. When you step on the rake or on the broom head, that's not linear destiny, that's something else. That is something like linear destiny because it's another facet of it. Because you can only go forward. When you go forward, you run into resistance that seems to be coming back the other way, and you go forward until you're all tired out or until you've carried that idea so far you can't carry it anymore. And so there is, in effect, the broom handle kind of destiny, which is action and reaction. You step on the broom handle, boom, the head comes, on the head and the handle comes back. Or even another one, the first time you get into a rowboat, you step on, and you try to step in the rowboat and you push back, and with the cause and the action and the reaction you suddenly find yourself doing a split until you hit the water, at least. And that's another element of destiny. But that isn't enough either, because we know that all destiny is not instantaneous. What we put out, some of it comes back, but some of it we go off on tangents and we carry things out for a long time until we're pooped out and then we do something else. Sometimes when we're going through things in life, we experience them over again and again. Like every day we get up, we go to work. And there are cycles, and we know the times of the day that we're tired, and we know the times of the day that we're most likely to making errors. And this is a cyclical destiny. There are some things, if you work with nature, like if you're a farmer or something like that, there are things that you start at one stage of a cycle and you harvest them at another stage of a cycle and you use them at yet another stage of a cycle, and then the cycle comes all the way around back. So we have three kinds of destiny now. We have linear destiny and a modified or a full linear destiny that has action and reaction, and we have a cyclical destiny where we say things that go around come around. In fact, sometimes if we're too linear, we put out causes and they hit us in the back of the head like a boomerang. If we're only looking forward and we're too linear, our destiny sneaks up on us from behind, and we get caught from behind. So we have these three kinds of destiny. I said this is a, you know what the linear destiny is like. It's like a boomerang that doesn't come back. You know what a boomerang is that doesn't come back? Stick. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now we could take all kinds of examples from linear destiny or action-reaction destiny or cyclical destiny, and we could come up with all kinds of examples. We see them all in our lives. We could see the positives and all that, but we'll do that over the next year, and then we'll get to some of the deeper questions after everybody has thought about all of these. There are combinations of these. We can put linear and circular together, and we have spiral destiny. And sometimes the spirals loop back. Now, we said before that when something happens in an instant in time, we call that a moment. That single instant in time, or that moment, can be in space. That can be represented as a point or as a dot. So what is an instant or a moment in time is a location or a dot or a point in space. If we just stayed in one place, that's what our consciousness would be like. Some people think that way about destiny. They have a very pointed view of destiny. They don't do anything. And meaning to say, nothing can go wrong if you don't do anything. Of course, there can't be any progress. And in a way, it's much better. I agree with Max Eindel on that one all the way. It's much better to be a tyrant or to do something really mean and nasty than to do nothing at all, because there's no experience. If we take one moment after another moment after another moment, we're just putting points together until we produce a line. That is, one thought, one action leads to another. When that line relative to a reference comes back to itself, we have the cyclical or the circular destiny. And if we take and fill in the circle, we have a larger point. That larger point is like saying, remember this, my child, with God, one moment is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one moment. It's that whole idea that the point can be just an instant, or that moment can be expanded. This is a very big point. Like to a giant, or to, if you were way out in space, this wouldn't even be visible. So space is a potential. And in that potential of space, we have forms, and we have matter. Forms and matter are congealments of the absolute or of the unknown in space. The co-potential is time. And that co-potential of time also is filled, and it's filled with spirit, and it's filled with creative actions of creative beings. So time and space are filled with forms and spiritual activities. The two of them correspond very closely to the diagrams that we have on the board here, these very sophisticated diagrams, such that in the same way that a point in space can be magnified and still be a point in space, so can the potential of time be magnified so that a moment can be an entire lifetime. For the angels, a year is like one moment. It's like all one moment because their consciousness is like that.
Is the reverse too? Whatever the reverse was. A moment is like a year is like a moment. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. With God, that is true, because in the eternity, a moment can be expanded to the extent of eternity. So that the deeper we go into the point of space, the deeper we go into our concentration, in our concentration exercise, the more our consciousness expands. Meditation is a natural byproduct of concentration. And if that concentration happens to be on the center of the whole business, as in prayer, then that concentration automatically expands us to a universal kind of consciousness. And from that universal consciousness, we can see the whole looking in. So it works all the same way. Mystics who have penetrated so deeply into the center of everything experience an expansion. What is the now for them covers a good deal of what we in this linear consciousness consider the past and the future. It's all as a moment to them. And the deeper that you go into that instant or that moment, and until you're approaching eternity, the more you can see both directions. This is why prophecy isn't just a knowing, isn't just a predicting of experiences or a bad talk, but not. Let's look a little bit more now at the destiny, and let's look at it in terms of juggling instead of in terms of pool, so we can begin to understand it all. I'm going to use a really nasty example. Do you know what an impact bomb is? It's something like the firecrackers that you throw, and when they strike something, they explode. Now, suppose you have an impact bomb in your hand, quite a potent one that could wipe out this whole room. If you throw it up in the air, you can throw it as high up as you want. As long as you catch it gently, when it comes back down, you're all right. You can throw it up, it comes back down, throw it up, come back down, you're fine. This is, in a way, a rough example of the way destiny works. We initiate causes. It's a simplified because there's not a lot of experience in this. It's just the opposite in some ways of the way destiny works, because you have a lot of attention on that ball because you don't want to drop it or you don't want to miss it altogether, because that's the ultimate of pain and things are wiped out. But on the other hand, in destiny, we throw out balls and they come back to us, and we throw them out and they come back to us, only there's something much more purposeful. It's not just throwing balls in the air. We're trying to garner something in the experience. We come here every year and we give each other talks and we bore each other. And the best part is the talks that take place, when we're sharing our love with each other. So when you're throwing a ball in the air like that, it's all right. Now, if our life would be very terribly simple if we had only one. It's hard to do just one simple thing and not goof up. Do you know what I'm trying to say? The simplest of all instructions, to have the continuity of consciousness and to have the follow-through that we can take one action and carry it all the way through without making a mistake. It's surprising how often we do that. But life isn't like that. Life is very, very busy. So what we do is we throw one ball up in the air, and while it's waiting to come back, we throw another one up. Right? We can throw that up as long as we catch them when they come down and they don't explode on us. And what do we do if we don't have enough time to lay it on the ground before the other one comes back? We can toss it back up again. And this is to show the way a lot of causes and consequences that we have. It isn't like the simple example of cause, consequence. What happens is when the ball comes back, we don't have anything to do but to put it back in motion again. And we put it back in motion, we put it back in a different kind of orbit. We don't do the same thing all over again. We learn things, and we have tricks in the whole business. So it isn't a matter that for a long time, especially if we want to have experience, especially if we want to do something purposeful, it isn't a matter that we're going to be done with our destiny. When things come back to us, what we do is catch them and throw them up for another revolution, and we do it in a different way. If some kind of terrible kind of Saturnine destiny comes back, we learn how to turn that into something very positive. Still using Saturn, it still might be the dark blue ball. It comes back to us, and we do the things that we do with the blue ball. And so the whole idea of a debt of destiny is a difficult thing. I don't think that it really, that it is, like all on one side of the scale and all on the other side of the scale. I think our destiny is in the air. Because the more balls that we have in the air, that's where it is. It's not, our destiny isn't in a destiny bank somewhere. It's in the air, and it keeps coming back to us. And I think it's wrong thinking, it's unhealthy thinking to think that we're going to get over our destiny, and when we're over it, we're all done. That what we want to do is we want to become better jugglers. And sometimes it happens when the balls come back that we see, there's 3 coming back in rapid succession, and I've got one in my hand right now. So what am I going to do? I'm going to heave that sucker way up there. And then I can deal with these 3 in the meantime, and then that one comes back again, and you put it way up there. Jugglers do that sort of thing, They put some way up there, and that's all. If we look astrologically at the way things happen, some of the destiny is very, very long-term. And the more sophisticated we get, the more long-term we make it. It used to be when we were primitive, like we fought hand-to-hand. Now we fling missiles thousands of miles, that our enemy is, if we have enemies, is thousands of miles away rather than being directly, and that's the kind of sophistication we're developing. Our consciousness is becoming more distant and more universal in both time and space, meaning that we can heave those balls up there, which means that we can have a very long-term destiny, and we can have a lot of balls that are in the background in terms of storage. So there's nothing anywhere in the universe that is dead. The universe is not made up of landmines. It's made of impact bombs. And everything is in motion, and it's up to us to keep up with all of that motion. And that's, some of these cycles, like in our liver, there's a Krebs cycle that is in terms of, milliseconds, isn't it? Several thousandths of a second that your liver goes through a cycle. Some of the cycles are thousands and thousands of years. So in terms of destiny, what we are in is a very dynamic milieu. And the sooner that we can begin to work with it that way, the sooner we're going to have living lives, and things are going to be fluidic and kept in action. That's all I have for now. Next year I'll come to some of the other questions about all of this and try to carry it further. Yes?
First of all, that was great. But
I forgot to answer Bill's question. In terms of, Heindel talks about 3 different kinds of distances that you throw the pool balls. He says that there are some kinds of pool balls that you throw up and you deal with them immediately. He associates that with cardinal sign destiny. But he says sometimes we can't reap the consequences. The life isn't long enough to reap the consequences, so in the next life we have another kind of destiny that's associated with common signs, in which we can alter that destiny by doing service or by changing things. And if we still don't learn the lesson of that destiny, then in the 3rd life we have what is called more irrevocable destiny. That is very, very, very hard to change, so that some people call that fated. I think we are less free than we think we are, and to a large extent it seems like our lives really are fated, because there are a good number of people, mostly involuntaries, but a few voluntary clairvoyants, that can tell us a lot of things that are going to happen many years in the future to us, because we have set them in motion already, and we're so much creatures of habit that we aren't inventive and creative people at all. Now, as Christian mystics, we followed the example of Christ, and Christ said, ask whatsoever ye will in my name, which is the cosmic word, and it will be given unto you. And that means to say, he didn't say, ask whatsoever ye will unless you have Saturn in Taurus in the 12th house. He didn't put that kind of rejoinder on it. He said, he said, ask whatsoever ye will. But some of the asking is really, really, really hard, so that some of it approaches fate. And when you think about it, at least me, boy, I'm really dense, and it takes a lot of time. I have to step. 3 times in life I've walked into street lamp poles. 3 times. That's dense. For look where you leap. That's not very foresightful at all. So my experience in working with people is that a lot of people, even very intelligent people that seem to be creative, are quite predictable. But I wouldn't say that there's fate, because there are those creative moments that we can do something different, and we can get right to the core of the ball that's coming back and use it for something positive when we throw it up again. Yes?
I was doing okay until you put that big moment up there.
Yes.
That big dot, which leads me right into what is one of my, this is perhaps a question, but it's more a mental trap of my own. And it's probably a mental trap because I'm mentally lazy and I don't pursue the question enough to try to get an answer to it. But it also, I think, is a hard one. And that is this. We were talking about billiard balls, and we're talking about moments.
Mm-hmm.
But the image that you paint is one of the things that happen in a linear fashion in the physical world. But when you talk about moments, you're talking about the passage of time.
Yes.
And when you talk about pulling out and start talking about time, you start talking about looking at larger segments of time as occurring in moments.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that we see things linearly is that we view time as linear.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And that when you start talking about pulling out and expanding so that you see larger and larger chunks of time, I can't help but drive that clear out to a God perspective that may encompass all of time as one complete moment.
Yep.
That has nothing whatsoever to do with anything linear. And then you get into the questions of, you can put it a whole bunch of ways. You can say, is cause and effect and all of the stuff, is that all illusion? You can say, is cause and effect just invalid, and is it rather, maybe the Easterners would say, that it's illusion. Maybe the traditional Christians would say that God is infinite and unchangeable, and all things are completely predestined. It's all set. It's like if you pull out so far, that there is no such thing as a passage of time. It's just that everything is.
Okay. There are a number of different kinds of time that we function with, and each of those types of time is important. Mystics tend to deal with momental time, and they penetrate. Unfortunately, in this expanding of the dot or of the point, we can't get into inner dimensions, because you can go within, and until everything is expanded, and then everything is within that. And if everything is within that, there's the kind of consciousness that while you are in the center and everything is within that expanded center, everything is happening inside of you. And every time we pray, every time we do any kind of spiritual exercise where we initiate a new cause, we are going within the center of the moment that is shared by all of the cosmos. Linear time is important for the consciousness of externalization. Linear time has the quality of progress. So that, especially with us, with the limited consciousness that we have now, we have to see that we can make progress and we can advance and we can get somewhere. Circular time or cyclical time is also important, because it is with that we understand the relationship between the point and the line as that there is a universal connection between them by seeing things happen again and again and again, and we see what is in effect an abstract pattern that is shared with the circumference and the point at the same time. The circumference, as it gets expanded to infinity, it becomes a line. It becomes directly linear. And so the cyclical part is necessary to understand the divine pattern, like we see in the astrological mandala. And spiral time, where we can see all of them, and where we can see where we institute new things in a cycle, and we make progress at the same time, is equally important. So there are 4 different kinds of time, and I think all of them, we function with all of them, and all of them are applicable. Ultimately, when we get into the momental time, when we have the whole consciousness, and God is contemplating itself through its own center, all of that is happening within it, and it institutes new causes and even new causers like ourselves, with our own center that relates to the center of the whole business. It sounds all terribly Leibnizian, doesn't it?
I don't know. I haven't played Leibniz in a long time. The thing that...
This is going awfully long. People are getting tired. But go ahead. Fire away.
The thing that disturbs me about the part that goes into the taking everything in a single moment is that it makes it, that from that perspective, it makes it seem like everything already is. And that there actually is no movement and actually is no change. And then actually, therefore, is no free will, and actually is no growth, and actually is no progress. That it's just all. Yeah,
that's another illusion that we have with this kind of consciousness. Because the more we get to the withinness, the more we get to the consciousness that not only what it is, but what it could be. That no one reaches that level of consciousness without at the same time developing creativity, because when you start penetrating that much into the center, you are penetrating into God, and you become like what you love. And what you penetrate into, you become like that. I don't mean to sound like I have all the answers, but and they're not even my own, you know. I'm sure that other people have had these same notions. All of these kinds of thoughts are very Orphic. The Pythagoreans and the Platonists had these kinds of thoughts, and there's every bit of evidence that the people of India probably did also. Okay. All right, now you got some more questions?
I don't say nothing no more.
Oh, I hope I didn't foster a non-questioning attitude.
No. You're okay.
All right, let's close with the Rosicrucian prayer, and then Eddie and I both love Blessed Be the Tie That Binds, and we can all sing it together after we do the Rosicrucian prayer. O God, increase our love for Thee, so that we may serve Thee better from day to day. Let the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Want to start off, Eddie?
Sure.
Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Now that was a warm-up. All right. I was thinking if it's a nice day, everybody's pretty tired, so we're not probably going to sing tonight. But tomorrow afternoon when we finish, we can sing then, or everything is in bloom at the Arboretum. We should take one trip to the Arboretum. It's fantastically... They don't like that a lot. No, it's not considered a park. Ela and I had a picnic there once, and we got chased out because they said this is a horticultural garden and it's not a park.
Richard, we didn't finish that.
Oh, you want to do the second verse?
It's not the second verse. uplift.
Oh, okay.